Welcome, everybody, to Michael Maher Live. One of the most vain show names I could have ever come up with because it's literally just my name with the word live after it. But hey, it works. And today on the show, well, on every show that we do, we just kind of talk about brands. And I bring my Amazon expertise, and the other person on the other side of the screen brings whatever expertise they have. And we like to talk about brands and just ways they can stay relevant and current. And today on the show, I have Sara Silverman. She works as the Eastern Regional Manager for Multiple Organics, but she's got a plethora of CPG knowledge. And we're going to just talk about brands and all that good stuff. Sorry, there's no music, people. I don't know. Technical difficulties. Anyway, welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
We were talking about maybe non-traditional paths, and you and I have that very much in common. I don't have an entrepreneurship degree, which was not even a thing when I was in school. I have an Asian studies degree, which is a whole other can of worms, but that's it. And it has not helped me. It was what got me to graduate school. And my daughter recently asked me, "How are you going to use that, Dad?" And I was like, "That's a great question. When I figure that out, I will let you know." But I got into e-commerce and just I hated my job, and so I started selling stuff online and on eBay and then on Amazon. And I grew this business for 6 years. And then I moved on to the agency side of things and was building an agency before I ever knew it. So a little bit untraditional path. A lot of people that have started agencies, like they work for the Wunderman Thompsons or the Havas Medias of the world, and then they went out. I had no expertise. So I had to cut my teeth in a really difficult and challenging way. But I think that resonates with you because you've also had a more maybe non-traditional path.
Yes. When I first got my first sales job, I'd actually gone into an office to interview to be an admin, just to do some administrative work, answer phones, work on Excel sheets. The ad sort of was ambiguous. It was like, natural food broker, looking for whatever. And then I looked them up on the internet. It was like 2006. And
I love how you said that, the internet, as it was almost ethereal and not real.
it was, well, at the time, it was the World Wide Web, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Everything had a www in front of it.
It really did. And
I remember that.
I looked at the companies that this brokerage worked with, and I was like, I buy these brands. And I was so stoked. I was like, I would happily answer phones for $15 an hour for this company. And 5 minutes into the interview with the owner of this company, who is, I think, an angel, she said, I'm not hiring you to be my admin, but I will offer you a sales job. And I was so confused for the first 3 minutes because I was processing it, because I had never been, like, nothing in my life has ever really been like handed to me. And like, she handed me my first sales role. And it was the first real meaningful sales job that I've ever had. And I covered a tri-state area. I had a salary, and I had like all of these beautiful relationships basically gifted to me. And I want to emphasize how important those relationships were from the very beginning. And they're literally the golden thread that's carried me through my career, because a lot of the relationships I established in 2007 are relationships that I can still call on today.
That's amazing.
To get a product placed, or at least have a meeting. And what this person gave to me in that instance, when she hired me to be her sales rep and not her admin, was my entire career. And she hired me, and she told me, she's like, it's because you immediately cultivated a relationship with me, and I wanted to buy what you were selling.
Interesting. And probably came from a lot of just, who you are. And I mean, this is the first time you and I really connected. And I feel like, we've been able to connect and talk about stuff. However, you also had a lot of probably knowledge about these brands because you used them and you were passionate about that values alignment of what you believed in and what you were able to do from a career standpoint.
Well, first and foremost, I'm the natural and organic specialty customer. I love food, and I care very deeply about where it comes from and how it's procured. Like, I want to know the name of the farmer who grew my beans. I want to hear their family story. I want to hear about the woman whose family recipe is now turned into this like incredible product that we can all enjoy now. Like to
Right.
me, that's what sells a product. And so as a customer, I think, well, why would I buy this? And then how do I communicate that to the buyers so that other customers can buy it too? I think that obviously numbers, margin, all of those things, all those factors are deeply important to the sales process. But at the crux of it, people are buying, I mean, I think with their conscious now more than ever. And that's
Yeah.
sort of what this industry, the little natural and organic CPG industry, that's where I've always existed. And as that market expands, more people are sharing my values and collective values like this. And so being able to communicate that to buyers is really important. And that's where I've been most successful.
Well, that it's funny you said, this little natural community, but like that's grown a ton to the point where big companies like Pepsi are buying Siete. Now, I did recently see that they're starting to add and change ingredients, which I think is a huge mistake because all of the people like myself, I'm guessing you, who buy those products are buying it, yes, because of the story, but also like I want the clean ingredients. I don't want to put trash in my body. I want to put good stuff in my body. Now, don't get me wrong. I will eat some cake and I will, do the things that are maybe not the quote unquote most healthy for you, but I think having some of those pleasures is good for you in a certain way. Maybe it's not, I'm not going to eat cake every single day, although I would want to. But like you start to make like that has expanded, but you start to make changes to that. Now you're muddying the waters of like the whole reason this brand started. But like that has grown so much, and that's probably encouraging just to see that value set grow.
Well, watching, the large big companies, like someone very wise said, don't think of it as the small company selling out. Think of it as the larger companies buying in.
Yeah.
And while that does give me some respite with some brands, I will say that once a company is acquired, I absolutely lose interest in buying them. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there is an entire list of brands that they're my last resort. Because if I see them in a gas station, I know that they're the better choice out of a lot.
Sure.
But I think a lot of people feel that way. There are many brands that the second they get that, big daddy deep pockets, I don't want anything to do with them. I'd much rather buy a smaller brand with maybe ingredients that are a little but they're independent and their values are much more aligned with mine than a company that once was something truly special that now is sort of like ambiguous and filled with things that now I don't want to put in my body anymore.
I might see it a little bit differently. Like I get what you're saying as someone who's also like built and owned companies. Like a lot of times someone's been in something and maybe they're just like, I've gotten this to where I can get it and I no longer have the drive or there's something else I want to do or something else I'm more passionate about. And so that legacy I think could still live on. And I don't have a problem with someone, like you said, I like that idea of a bigger company buying in. I think a lot of food companies now are realizing we got to make some changes because people are not just going to keep buying our crap. Like we can't push this as great or good for your spin it because the consumer has a lot more knowledge at their fingertips and can pretty much access it at any times because of the World Wide Web.
Yes.
And so they can find out what they want. But when you do start, so I don't have a problem with that, but when you do start to make changes to it, now you're altering what you bought as a big company. I think that is just really stupid because you're hurting your investment.
I mean, yes. And on the other side of that coin, what I do appreciate when larger companies buy in, they expand distribution so more people can get a better for you product. And even though they might change some of the ingredients, they still tend to be better for you or better for you adjacent than what historically has been offered.
Yes.
So I mean, I think I just get a little sensitive because again, the R word, I'm very relationship forward with the products that I buy.
Yeah.
Often buying brands that I, am acquainted with the founders in some way or, follow them on LinkedIn. It's, so when I see notable changes, that's when I deviate. But then there are some brands that are just sort of ubiquitous now with the better for you space. And I've been buying them. I continue to buy them because they've maintained that level of integrity, regardless of who's purchased them. And,
That would be hard to do though, to like not to push back and say, if you stay on as an owner, like, or lead, no, we don't want to do this. That would be there'd be a lot of stress to have to, talk up to whoever purchased you, because it's like, well, now we acquired you and we're going to do this our way. But it's like, you acquired us because we got here because of who we are and what we've done. And that
Right.
matters to the consumer more than ever now.
I mean, I've been a part of brands that have gotten purchased or acquired in some way. And then, you'd like to think that the narrative is going to stay the same and the values are going to be, still, shining through, but that just doesn't happen. I mean, in reality, it's really hard to execute with the same mom and pop family vibes when, you're owned by a multinational conglomerate. I won't name names.
Yeah. Well, I think we all know some national conglomerates. I've certainly named some names. Yeah, but I think about that all the time as a business owner, as someone who's in a space where people are getting acquired, and I think, man, like, cool. It certainly would be cool to have more money, more cash to do stuff with, but also without that mission behind you, it would just kind of be like taking cash for no reason. Like, if it's to expand your mission and your value set, great. And then also, I think, well, what's the expectation behind that? It's going to be scale, 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 scale. And my question is always, my worry or my concern is always going to come back to, like, what is the quality of that scale? I would so much rather walk away from a project and someone's like, man, Michael and his team at Cartology, they absolutely crushed it on Amazon. And that's what we tell people, like, our niches. It's winning on Amazon. So I would so much rather take less, but be able to really crush it for those people and have a better reputation and less bodies, I guess, for lack of a better term, behind us. And those people really be successful than, like, well, we've hit this revenue number, because that really is a vanity metric. Although we set goals, but it's like, okay, I've achieved revenue. What else have you done?
And at what point, like, of course, like, you can sort of see when brands are building to create something meaningful, to be, a legacy brand. And then you can also sort of, at least I can, maybe it's like a little sixth sense, I can look at a brand and be like, oh, they're scaling to sell.
Okay. Interesting.
And
now let's start naming names. Okay, Sarah. I'm joking.
No. But no,
give us your list.
It's, I think that it's fine. Like, if you start a business, it's not just, playtime. You want to make money, you want to grow something and build something.
Yep.
But I think if it's just with the intention to scale and get like a 9-figure exit, I don't know. Like, that can be for everyone else. Like, I don't want to play a part of that, because I do care about what I'm supporting. And a lot of times those exits turn into, like, your product disappearing in 2 years.
So, I mean, sometimes the acquisition is to just get you off the market, to prevent
you buy your competition. Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. But what would be the real flex would be like, I'm taking this money and I'm going to go build something even better, so that you can't.
So we've seen that.
I'm sure there's like non-competes, but yeah.
We've seen that. I think one of the most incredible flexes, and I won't name names, the Eat the Change folks who have their just iced tea. Like, that was incredible. The founders of Honest Tea, rebuilt their brand, and it's so strong now. And that's a story where I'm, like, humbled and impressed every day when I see that, because that's the kind of brand that I look at and I'm like, that is so meaningful. And, like, I'm so happy that I can see that brand everywhere again and know that it's the values that I care about, and I can buy that product without hesitation. And I know a lot of other customers feel the same way. And when I see things like that, it's like, wow, like, that to me is impactful. That's where it's at for me. I love a brand like that. I love a brand where the values stay strong consistently. It's not like when you see, like, trends, like when you see a brand completely rebrand and then follow a trend, it's like,
that's going to fade at some point.
Yeah. So I really appreciate a strong brand with strong values that stays consistent over time and doesn't look for the flash in the pan trends that are sort of hollow. And, when you go to a food show, you see all these like trends, but like if you don't see them year over year and if you don't see it become a category, it's a lot of lost money and it feels very wasteful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then like if it's about the money, okay, like yeah, you can get the money, like, but is that really what's going to be the most impactful? Probably not. I mean, maybe people need to reorient themselves towards being impactful versus just a money, versus just a revenue number. But I think there's two things here, like having an authentic mission in what you're doing, and not trying to necessarily get the whole market, but just be noticed for the thing that you do and do it really, really, really well. And then there's also this economical piece that's like, my unit economics have to make sense. My costs, my
Right.
distribution, all this stuff has to make sense. And so marrying those two things together can be super hard to do, but I think that's very complex. But that's why you get smart people who like, hey, maybe I'm not a numbers person, but I need someone to help me, or a process person. I need someone to help me with the ops. I'm going to continue to build to this vision and come up with new product ideas and all this stuff. But I need someone to help me on the operations side who can say, hey, this product line is crushing it. We need to double down. And this other one, it's not really resonating. We can't make unit economics work. We need to let it go, because for the sake of the vision that you have, putting those two things together.
The balance of staying relevant and staying authentic and doing that consistently, and not like letting trends completely warp your branding and your values and your mission. And then also, playing to attracting new customers and new customer acquisition, and all of that needs to come into play. So, I mean, it's a constant balancing act, and you can't make everyone happy all the time. And,
Sure.
I definitely
don't even try.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do look at brands sometimes and I'm like, okay, that's not for me, but that's cool. Good for them. They're doing whatever it is that they're doing. And they're, their valuation is like billions of dollars or whatever.
Yeah.
Good for them. And I move on with my life, because you can't get caught up in another brand's mission and narrative if it doesn't speak to you.
Yeah. I think that those trends, like we talked about, you see stuff come and go. So if you're having to pivot every single time a new trend pops up, like how much relevance can you have? And then you end up alienating the people who really were into your product, and having to restart and rebuild a customer base over and over and over again is really, that would be very challenging to do.
Yeah.
And it would actually make it harder for you to remain relevant. Like you're chasing the trend, but what I think would give you more relevance is your authenticity, hitting the same nail on the head over and over and over again, if you believe in the mission and if there is proof that that is something that people want. And if you can validate that, even with a smaller market, and have a bigger hold on it, like you may not become the next big CPG conglomerate, but that's okay. You don't need to be, because
that doesn't always need to be the goal.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be the goal. I saw someone say something about SaaS companies, how like Salesforce and other companies were coming out and they were going really wide. And that was like the thing, is like, we would become a really big company, really big scale. But now those companies are starting to acquire people that have gone really deep. And that seems to be the trend, is like really, really, really become focused in your area, because there's so much complexity. It's like people say Amazon's a niche, which it is, but there's even like niches within there. There are people that all they do is like reimbursement for lost or broken inventory. There's people that all they do is like creative work. So like there's all these areas in there, but like trying to be all things to all people would probably lack relevance, and it would also lack an area of expertise too. It's like, do you want to spread yourself really thin and do a bunch of things okay, or could you go really deep, become really well known for this thing? Then maybe over time you might be able to expand your product lines and have more efficacy across those product lines.
Yeah, that's cool.
What could brands walk away from just today, talking about authenticity, talking about how sometimes the acquisition doesn't, or most of the time doesn't maybe necessarily go how you want, but that authenticity is super important, and you need to make those economies of scale make sense as you get into different distribution paths. What's something that a brand, because I think both those things can coexist and are important. And if they can't coexist, then the brand can't really exist long term. And we've
Right.
certainly seen over the past, I know, 12 to 24 months, brands exit or leave, not get acquired, but shut down just because they couldn't make it work. And sometimes that happens. Like, what's something practical that a brand could do walking away from this conversation to ensure, in some cases, or just ensure as best as they possibly can, that they can remain relevant and authentic? I think that was a good way of putting it. Be authentic and remain relevant.
I think like stay in your lane, like really know who you are. And like you said, like focus on what you do well and don't like have your blinders on, because when you're looking at what other brands are doing, like let them do that. If you've found success doing what you do, look at what the other successful brands who've accomplished what you've done are doing and have done over time. The brands that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years that are relevant to this day and successful and living their best CPG life, do what they're doing. Model your business off of the businesses that are doing well, and have the type of customer base that you want, and know who your customer is and speak to them and don't take them for granted.
I like that speak to your customers thing. Like, you could even just find a list of people that have purchased your product and do it. It's more anecdotal. Like, do a survey with them. Like, why did you buy this? Why do you like this? Get that information. You can certainly do other things as well, but like just talking to your consumer is something that I think is super underrated. And that's, I think, why sometimes you see people maybe not doing in-store activations, is because they feel like it might be a waste of time. But like getting to talk to someone and do a sampling, you're like, okay, how many people can I impact with that? But if you can do that over time and make a connection, build a relationship with someone who's like, it's much harder for them to ignore you, even if it's not you, the owner, but like, people who do sampling and that's like their whole job. They can make a connection with someone, really help them to understand the product and why it's important. Now they've tasted it. They have an opportunity to pick it up. It may not result in a bunch of scale yet, but now you've made a connection. And the next time someone walks into a store or they see your product online, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I had that product. I did that thing. They're going to recall that. And I love the flavor. And like the proof, I think the actual quote is, the proof of the pudding is in the taste, not the proof is in the pudding. But the proof of the pudding is in the taste. Like, if you taste something and you love it, okay, great. Now you got someone hooked. But like, they can't do that if you don't interact with them and you just let something sit on a shelf.
Well, that's a very visceral connection, right? Like taste.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the way we create memories. And so I've done field activation and marketing for a couple brands. And anytime I, as a broker rep or brand rep, I've been a part of their field marketing. And so I think it's super important to get feedback. There are customers who've come and said, hey, I really love this product, and then you did this, and now I don't want to buy it anymore. And I don't know how big of a wave that makes, but it does make a ripple, because I'll send that feedback in my little report. Hey, customer did make note. They didn't like that we switched from this salt to that salt. I mean, I don't know what they do with it after that, but it's being communicated up the chain. Additionally, I found 2 products recently because of in-store demos, and I now purchase those products. And
there you go. It works.
One's a cute little local brand, and the other one is ever rapidly expanding. I don't know if I can name names, but
I mean, I don't think there's any harm in.
Yeah, Fortune Favors pecans. They are
okay.
I think I'm buying something like a can a week.
Okay, wow, that was totally worth it.
Yeah,
for them to do that activation
in the market. Like, and I happened to be like acquainted with their demo person in the store, and I was like, hey, how are you? And like, oh, demoing. And I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm gonna pass. And that okay. And then I circled back almost immediately because I saw one of the flavors, and I was like, all right, let me try this. And it was so good. Then I tried them all, and then I bought 2 cans, and now
that's amazing.
I'm a customer. So I mean, those things do matter. They do work when you can build that connection.
I love that. Now I'm going to be looking that up. And if you had said something about a couple, like, model your, I love their packaging, modeling your, business after other people who've stayed in their lanes and have remained authentic. Are there a couple of brands that you can think of, like, man, these are brands that I really love? I feel like they focused on authenticity, and that's actually what's helped maintain relevancy for them.
Yeah. One that always stands out is Lundberg.
Okay.
They do rice.
They do it really well.
Yeah. And rice adjacent products. Like,
okay.
And then the innovation that they've had has been relevant. Like, they're not making, salsa now. They didn't expand into like 17 other categories. They stayed rice and rice adjacent. And all of their innovation is practical. It's delicious. It's exciting. And they didn't just expand in innovation in terms of product. They have now gone beyond organic and started looking to regenerative, which is massively important to me.
Oh, for sure.
So watching them do what they've been doing in an authentic, meaningful, sustainable way, like, I wouldn't even consider buying another rice. No offense to the other rice companies.
Sure.
Best of luck. But if I were going to start a company, I would want to model it after Lundberg, because they've been around. They are one of the establishing legacy natural foods brands, as far as I'm concerned. And it depending on what kind of success I'd like to have, I would model my business after the success of another brand, and not in a competitive way, but just in a
learning from them.
Yeah, to be truly inspired by a company and its values. Another one I want to say is Vital Farms.
Okay.
I worked with them a long time ago. I was a retail execution manager for them for a short period of time, and I learned so much in that time, and I care so deeply about what it is that they're doing to establish really good agricultural practices.
Okay.
And I was really impressed when I learned that they are still independently owned. And that, I think, is really powerful. And I think, like, everyone has a lot to say about agricultural practices, especially as, the definitions of what is appropriate and acceptable sort of vary. But I've been very impressed with them.
I love that. Those are great examples. And sometimes I love rice. Rice is maybe not the most sexy food. It's not better for you soda. It's not candy. It's not, but those staples done really well will have more sustenance. And as someone, okay, well then, great. I love it.
I love a carb.
Yeah. Hey, but don't get me wrong. I love a good carb too. I think I always liken stuff to humans and interactions. And I think about, I told you, like, I will be celebrating 17 years of marriage in October. I know I look like I may not even be old enough to be 17, but I swear I've been almost married that long. And a lot of times, this is just one guy's perspective, but a lot of guys, I think, worry about getting married because they're like, oh, look at all the things I'm going to miss out on. Oftentimes, like, physical stuff. I'm going to miss out on all this stuff. I don't miss any of those things because what I've been able to cultivate with my wife over time, it's taken a lot of work. It's maybe less sexy work, but like, that's so much better now. Everything is better now than it was 21 years ago when we first originally started dating. That to me is what I think about of like a Lundberg. Like, they've stayed committed to that thing. They've done it really well. And that, if anything, doing the work. Yeah. Is that what you said?
They put in the work.
They put in the work. They're doing the work. They're being consistent. That to me ends up in a much more authentic and relevant product because you've been consistent. Rice isn't going anywhere. Like, people love rice. They want
important. It's a really important. Yeah.
Just like bread. It's been around for millennia. And so I love that. And I think that, if anything, is way more sexy long-term than just following the trend in the next, little high. So anyway, marriage advice for anybody out there. If you find the right person, which you're probably not the right person, you're not going to find the perfect person is what I'm getting at.
There's no perfect person.
There is no perfect person. Find the right person and commit to them. It's so much better. So much better. Anyway, not everyone's called to be married though, too. I get that. So
you follow your own path. I'm on husband number 2, but I want
Okay, hey, great.
last husband, and I've been married for 12 years. And yeah, it's the work you
Congrats.
put in. Thank you. It's the work you put in, and it's about a choice. So like these companies are choosing to do the things that make them like a legacy brand or a scaling brand to be purchased.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you have to decide like what are your goals long term, right? And I think in business, you have to decide that the way that you decide what kind of life you're going to have. You choose your partner every single day. So you choose, do you want to be that legacy brand? And so you have to make the choices that bring you to that place where you've become the legacy brand.
I love that. That's where we should end, because I felt that same thing. Like, am I making decisions as a company in the moment, or am I thinking about 3, 5, 10 years down the road? So to all you brands out there, I'm paraphrasing, but Sara says, be authentic. That's and that's what helps you to be relevant. I kind of said that a little bit, but you said authenticity and relevancy, which is great, but also making choices for the long term, not just for the moment, is what can help you to remain relevant. So I love it. Thanks for joining me, Sara.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
All right, everybody, that's it. We're gone. Bye bye.